Welcome to Inside Politics with Kevin Klein, beyond the headlines, beyond the spin. Straight facts, sharp analysis, and common sense conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of Inside Politics. I'm your host, Kevin Klein. I am joined, as always, by three of my Winnipeg Sun colleagues. Former Canadian radio talk show host Geoff Currier. We have Royce Koop, who is also a professor of political science at the University of Manitoba, and Lawrence Pinsky, KC, a former human rights adjudicator. You can read their columns anytime you like by visiting winnipegsun.com, and they've got new columns coming up this weekend.
Okay, so this was a story in Alberta from the CBC about the government of Alberta's use of the notwithstanding clause to protect its back to work legislation for teachers who've been on strike. And so the CBC journalist wrote this lengthy story condemning the use of the notwithstanding clause as anti-democratic and authoritarian. And in doing so, she spoke to two experts. One is a political scientist who I know who was opposed to the use of the notwithstanding clause in this context. Perfectly fine. Then they spoke to a former liberal politician, one of the experts who also condemned it. But it turned out that the journalist had also spoken to another political scientist who was supportive of the use of the notwithstanding clause, who thought it was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And magically, that person didn't get included in the story. That narrative was excluded. And so this all came out on Twitter, or I guess X now. And it was the former Premier and Cabinet Minister Jason Kenney came out swinging over this, over media bias in the CBC in Alberta. And I thought it was a really interesting story. The journalist kind of pushed back. But Jason Kenney is taking a really strong stand against this. I kind of love to see it, to be honest.
We actually have to do that. I mean, I could give you a couple of personal examples where CBC reporters have done that to me. You know, they've gotten somebody to say something that they wanted, so they ran with that. They didn't I know they talked to other people, but they didn't use them because it doesn't support the narrative. This is why I don't think, and we've had this discussion, we're not going to get into it again, but this is what the problem I have with CBC. This is the problem I have with mainstream media. This is why I like that the Winnipeg Sun is an independent. It's not a part of any organization, because stuff like that does happen. And we're hearing it from staff that are leaving the CBC. But still, we have a government, it doesn't matter, we just have a government right now that wants to give them more money. And the CBC, I think, Geoff, you brought this up last time, is desperately afraid to tell you how many people watch GEM.
Yeah, I think there's been an erosion in confidence and in trust in traditional media for the last couple of decades. It's, this isn't an all of a sudden thing. I think we all recognize it. That erosion has taken place very gradually. Unfortunately, the alternatives, and I think generally speaking, going back those 20 years, that most traditional media outlets were actually trying to do their jobs. But you start to get into an era in which technology allows anybody with a computer and a microphone to become a so-called journalist. And so the echo chambers get created. And you get all kinds of different websites and people following people who are far outside what the mainstream is, and the conspiracy theories start to come up. And then you get somebody who's a presidential campaign, running a presidential campaign, who claims that all traditional media outlets are fake and they're all lying. And if you repeat a lie, as Goebbels knew, if you repeat a lie often enough, and a big lie often enough, people will believe it. And as a great American president once said, you can fool some of the people all of the time. And with the erosion of a lot of traditional media, the business model now no longer supports the kind of journalism that we once knew. The economics just don't allow it anymore. And I don't know where we're going. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Geoff, I think the problem goes even deeper than that. I think it goes to journalism school and universities. I think that the people going into these things begin from a leftist dogmatic perspective. What do you know? When they get out there, that's all they espouse. It happened to me from the Free Press when I did an interview with them. And their headline was precisely the opposite of what I said, exactly the opposite. And I had people in the room with me to show that because I was worried about them. And it was exactly the opposite. You have to read through the article to find the exact quote, which is the opposite of the headline. And the CBC does this just recently. You see it domestically, as Mr. Kenny pointed out. You see it in foreign policy. I don't know if you guys know this. 460 people were killed in Sudan when a maternity ward was bombed. Will you see that on the CBC? No. Do you see anything about Christians being attacked? Actually, churches burned in Canada, Christians being attacked in Africa, and actually genocides? No. Do you see it every day about Israel, even false news over and over again, and biased reporting? Absolutely. I don't know if this is fueled by the fact that we pay them $1.4 billion or more, and but it's a systemic problem that will bring down these media, because eventually that funding will stop. There is not the money to keep doing that.
I think what you touched on that we should talk about is that it's the professor's fault.
It is, yes.
Royce,
Well,
sorry.
okay, let me ask you,
Professor.
let me ask you all guys real quick. If you had a child graduating high school, said, okay, Mom, Dad, I want to go to university, where would you send them to insulate them from that kind of mindset that is poisoning the minds of our young people these days? What university could you possibly send them to in this country?
I think seriously, the best one in Canada is the University of Calgary. It's not perfect. There are problems, but the best one, when we see how they have dealt with certain problems, has to be UC. Beyond that, it's a real problem across the country and in the United States too. Look at Columbia, look at Harvard, look at and in England, all the major institutions have been infiltrated by billions of Qatari dollars, and here we are.
Let's get Royce in on this, because Royce is, I would consider, the expert on that, because you are a professor of political science. What do you have to say when you hear stuff like this, Royce?
People should send their kids to the University of Manitoba. It's a great university, and then be selective about the courses that you take. One of this started with journalists. I have noticed it, with young journalists. Sometimes you see that you can see the idea that journalism is about bringing about social change. It's about bringing about change. It's not about reporting the facts. It's not about being objective. It's about bringing about change. And you can see that reflected sometimes. And I think there is a kind of a sense that in journalism school, they do get this kind of guidance, and that's how they see their jobs. And of course, journalism it tends to attract a certain kind of student that might have those kinds of views ahead of time. But people should certainly send your kids to university, help them choose their courses, choose good courses, and you'll be very happy with the outcome, including the University of Manitoba. It's a great university.
Can I just say a couple things? One is $1.5 billion to the CBC, $400 million to Palestinian entities, $600 million just the other day announced, I think yesterday actually, to deal with gender equality. We're talking billions and billions of dollars. Instead of enforcing the law, instead of protecting women, largely, who are the victim of domestic violence through legal means, allowing bail to be so loose that abusers are allowed to get out and go back and do God knows what. It's just impossible. In terms of the University of Manitoba, there's lots I could say. I'm going to refrain from doing that, but there's lots that needs to be cleaned up at the University of Manitoba. Royce, I don't know how many courses you teach. I'd send all of my kids to your courses, but in terms of the poison in the university, it's there in their human rights program, in multiple programs. I would follow a Finnish model and fund what we need: applied sciences, doctors, nurses. That's what I would do, and stop funding things that generate just this dogmatic bias coming out of universities that are poisoning our kids and poisoning our society.
Geoff, I want to give you the final word. Sorry, Royce, you go ahead, then they're going to give Geoff the last word.
No, maybe it's a longer conversation, but universities need good liberal arts programs. We don't just want to send our kids to science and engineering. We need good politics programs, good sociology programs, good anthropology programs,
Find
good
one.
economics programs, and those are worth investing in. Yeah, I mean, I know. I think, if when I send my daughter to university, I think you got to be careful about the courses you choose. Be choosy, but you can get an outstanding liberal arts education that'll help you in life at the University of Manitoba and lots of Canadian universities.
All right, Geoff, final
Uh,
word.
well, I'm mightily concerned about the kind of people that we're churning out of universities these days, and the atmosphere. And this is not new. I think Thomas Sowell, the famous conservative commentator in the United States, talking about diversity, because we're absolutely obsessed with the word diversity in Canada. But if you get a room full of people who look different but who all think the same, that's not really diversity. And Thomas Sowell said the next time they talk about diversity at your university, ask them how many conservatives they have in their sociology department.
It's a good question.
Good point.
Fair
Great
question.
point.
Well, there's a lot of diversity in universities. You've got Marxists and liberals and good.
Probably a good idea to end it there. Gentlemen, great discussion. Thank you very much for joining me. Again, we look forward to reading your columns, winnipegsun.com, or you can support local journalism and subscribe to our online e-edition. You can do that by also visiting winnipegsun.com. And of course, we want you to smash that like button, something like that, and follow our YouTube page. We'll look forward to our discussion next week when we can focus on the budget and potentially an election. We'll find out next week.
Thanks for watching Inside Politics with Kevin Klein. Please like and subscribe to this channel and visit thewinnipegssun.com for more.